4,000 years ago, a civilization of 5 million people simply stopped existing. Not conquered, not destroyed, not swallowed by a natural disaster. They just stopped. They had built cities more advanced than anything else on Earth at the time. Their streets were laid out in perfect grids. Their homes had running water. Their sewer systems were so sophisticated that nothing comparable would be built in Europe for another 3,000 years. And yet, we do not know their rulers' names. We cannot read their writing. We do not know what language they spoke. We do not even know what they called themselves. After 100 years of excavation, after generations of the world's greatest archaeologists dedicating their lives to uncovering its secrets, after a $1 million prize offered to anyone who can crack their ancient code, we still cannot answer the most basic question of all. What happened to them? To understand just how extraordinary this disappearance is, you first need to understand what these people built. 5,000 years ago, a civilization began rising along the banks of the Indus River in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. By around 2600 BCE, they were at the absolute peak of their power. And what a peak it was. At their height, the Indus Valley people controlled a territory larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. 5 million people, hundreds of cities, all of it connected by trade routes that stretched across South Asia and into the Middle East. Their two greatest cities were Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. Each of them housed somewhere between 40 and 50,000 people. At a time when most cities in the ancient world had fewer than 10,000. But it was not just their size that was remarkable. It was what was inside them. These were not rough settlements scratched into the earth. These were planned cities, carefully designed, precisely built, and maintained to a standard that staggers the imagination. The streets ran in perfect grids. The houses were made of fired brick, often 2 or 3 stories tall. And almost every home had something that would not become standard in European cities until the 1800s. A private bathroom connected to a citywide drainage and sewage system, the world's first sewer system, running beneath streets built 4,500 years ago. They were not just surviving, they were thriving. They traded jewelry as far away as ancient Mesopotamia. They developed standardized weights and measures used consistently across their entire civilization. Archaeologists have found evidence of dentistry, of musical instruments, of children's toys. Put simply, these people were ahead of everyone else on Earth. And then, within a few centuries, every single one of those cities was empty. Now here is where this story becomes something stranger than any other story in human history. Because it is not just that the Indus Valley civilization disappeared, it is everything we do not know about them. Even now, after a century of trying to find out. Start with their writing. The Indus script appears on thousands of small artifacts. Pottery, stone seals, metal objects. About 4,000 inscriptions have been found in total. But most of them are tiny. Most are carved onto seals, no bigger than a postage stamp. And the inscriptions themselves are short, usually just 4 or 5 symbols. There is no Rosetta Stone. There is no bilingual artifact that contains the Indus script alongside a language we already understand. And unlike ancient Egyptian, where the names of rulers like Cleopatra and Ptolemy gave scholars a starting point, we have no known names of any Indus Valley ruler to work from. UNESCO estimates the script contains somewhere between 400 and 600 unique symbols. Scholars have been trying to decode it since the 1920s. They have not succeeded. The Tamil Nadu government recently offered a $1 million prize to anyone who cracks it. That prize sits unclaimed. We cannot read a single word these people ever wrote. But the undeciphered writing is not even the strangest part. there is something about this civilization that no archaeologist has ever been able to fully explain. There are no palaces, there are no royal tombs, there are no thrones, no statues of rulers, no grand temples built to honor a king. Think about what that means. Every other major civilization of this era, Egypt, Mesopotamia, the early dynasties of China, was organized around a central ruler whose power was displayed in monuments and burial sites. You knew who was in charge because they left enormous evidence of themselves behind. The Indus Valley left nothing like that. Not a single identifiable ruler, not one royal burial, 5 million people, hundreds of cities, and we cannot find evidence of anyone being in charge. Who governed this civilization? How did they coordinate the construction of identical, carefully planned cities across a territory the size of Western Europe? With no apparent king to give the orders, we genuinely do not know. And then there is the question of violence, or rather, the almost complete absence of it. For a civilization that lasted over 1,000 years, in a world full of conquest and warfare, there is almost no archaeological evidence of organized violence, no weapon stockpiles, no fortifications built to repel armies, no mass graves of battle casualties. In a world where every other great civilization was built partly on warfare, the Indus Valley people lived in extraordinary peace. Or at least every piece of evidence we have points that way. And then they vanished. Archaeologists have spent a century proposing explanations. Here are the 4 leading theories, and why none of them fully closes the case. The first theory, invasion. For decades after the cities were excavated in the 1920s, the dominant explanation was a simple one. A group of people from Central Asia, sometimes called Aryans, swept down from the north and destroyed the civilization. Some early archaeologists pointed to skeletal remains found at Mohenjo-Daro as evidence of a violent massacre. But modern analysis has largely taken this theory apart. The skeletal remains showed no clear signs of systematic violence. The timing does not hold up cleanly, and a single invasion cannot plausibly explain the collapse of a civilization spread across 1.5 million square kilometers of territory. Then, there's flooding. Mohenjo-Daro is known to have been hit by devastating floods more than once. Some researchers proposed that repeated catastrophic flooding made the cities unlivable and forced mass migration. But flooding explains damage to specific locations. It does not explain why hundreds of cities across an enormous territory all declined within the same general period. Some researchers think the answer is simpler: trade. The Indus Valley economy was built on long-distance trade, connections to Egypt, to Mesopotamia, to cultures across South Asia. Some researchers believe those trade networks collapsed, and when the economic foundation crumbled, the cities had no reason left to exist. This is plausible. But it still leaves open the question of why people did not simply adapt and rebuild. The fourth theory, climate change. This is where the most compelling recent evidence points, and new research published just last year has dramatically sharpened the picture. Scientists now believe the region suffered through 4 separate periods of extreme drought between roughly 4,400 and 3,400 years ago. During this time, average annual rainfall dropped by 10 to 20%. Average temperatures rose, lakes shrank, rivers ran lower and lower. One drought lasted 113 years, another lasted 164 years. Not a bad season, not a difficult decade, centuries of relentless drying. And critically, the timing of the longest drought aligns almost exactly with the archaeological evidence of widespread city abandonment across the Indus Valley. But here is what makes this finding genuinely unsettling. The research suggests this was not a sudden collapse. There was no single catastrophic moment when everything fell apart at once. Instead, the population slowly retreated. Cities that had been built inland, where rainfall had once been reliable, were gradually abandoned as the rains failed. People moved closer and closer to the river itself, chasing the last dependable water source across a landscape that was slowly dying. It was not a bang. It was a slow fade. A civilization of 5 million people quietly unraveling over centuries, pushed by forces they could not control and probably could not fully understand. And eventually, even the river was not enough. So here's where we stand. We know this civilization existed. We know it was remarkable, possibly the most peaceful, most sanitation conscious, most equitably organized civilization of its era. We know it declined slowly over centuries, most likely driven by climate change on a scale that simply overwhelmed everything they had built. But we still cannot read their words. We still do not know their leaders' names. We do not know what they called their cities, their gods, or themselves. We do not know if they had a word for what was happening to them as their world slowly came apart. There is a $1 million prize waiting for whoever unlocks their script. It remains unclaimed. There are almost certainly Indus Valley cities still buried underground, unexcavated, unstudied, potentially full of answers. The region has only been partially explored. The full picture may still be out there, waiting. Or it may not be. The Indus Valley civilization lasted longer than the Roman Empire. It fed 5 million people for over 1,000 years. It may have been, in many ways, more advanced than anything that came after it for 1,000 years. And after a century of searching, we still know almost nothing about who these people really were. Maybe the drought explains everything. Maybe somewhere beneath the soil of Pakistan or northwest India, there is a bilingual inscription waiting to be found. The Indus Rosetta Stone that cracks the whole mystery open in an afternoon. Or maybe this is simply one of those cases where history swallowed its secrets completely. Where a civilization of 5 million people rose, thrived, and faded, leaving behind only ruins, unreadable symbols, and questions that may never be answered. What do you think really happened to them? Was it the climate? An invasion the evidence has not yet revealed? Something else entirely? Something we have not even considered yet? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this is the kind of history that keeps you up at night, the stories that never made it into your textbooks, subscribe to Vanished History. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we dig up another one. We are just getting started.